Hello everyone. In today's video, I will be going over Interview with the Vampire episode 2, season 1, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self. Spoiler alert, I will be revealing spoilers. So if you have not seen the episode, please go back and watch it, like, subscribe, so that way you can stay in contact with my channel and then come back and let me know what you think. So you guys, I'll just be simply breaking it down and just giving my take on the things that I liked about the episode. And that's it. I hope you enjoy. Let's get right into it. So at the beginning of episode 2, we see Rashid and Daniel. And Rashid is kind of like standing aloft, and there's a distance between Daniel and Rashid, and they're not too close together, which is something that I noticed. But after Rashid kind of gives notion to Louis and his art and what he likes in painting, he also mentions a name called Marius, who is as the person who actually painted the beautiful painting. He goes into the chorus and the dinner, and then Daniel kind of suspects something between Louis and Rashid, which I thought that was very interesting. And I just kind of, when I went back and watched it again, I watched it multiple times. I kind of thought, well, maybe the reason why, aside from having a storyline, obviously, I think one of the reasons why Daniel would have asked if Rashid and Louis were more than just friends is because Rashid really comes off as someone who knows everything, about the person that they're working for. So, and you can obviously, he most likely lives there too, right? So it's like, I can see why Daniel would be like, okay, are you guys got something going on or not? So I thought that was very interesting. But so then Daniel is served his 7-course meal, and then Louis comes out, and automatically Louis, he doesn't even say hey. He's just like, I apologize for my outburst, and I was like, okay. The first time I watched episode 2, guys, and I seen that he kind of apologized for crying about being turned into a vampire or reacting in a way because he basically lost his life. That was when he lost his humanity, I guess I should say, not life, but lost his humanity. I don't know, I was very taken aback by that, and I didn't realize until later on in the season as to why, but so I'm not going to go into it. But like, I was very taken aback by the fact that he was like, felt the need to apologize. I mean, obviously, yes, it's an interview, but it's like, dude, you lost, your life was forever changed. It doesn't matter how many years ago it was. I cannot see anybody not being emotional about it. So I just thought that that was a bit weird that he felt the need to apologize to Daniel about it. But anyway, so he continues his story. He goes on and begins talking about um, he continues his stories and begin talking about what has happened after while he's being transformed into a vampire. So Louis begins to explain that after the pleasure and the bliss and all the good things about, making this vampire bond and connection with Lestat, he is now in pain because his body is dying. Lestat explains to Louis that his body is dying, and that's why he's feeling pain. And so after they end up going to the grave site to get rid of the bodies that Lestat has totally killed the priest, in episode 1. But after he completely dies and then finally comes back to life, um, it's time for Lestat to show Louis, how to hunt. And Louis describes his first hunting as the start of an apprenticeship, is what he calls it. That's what Louis calls it. And so it's very exciting because we get to see Louis hunt for the very first time, and to see his reactions and how he was going to respond to being a vampire. His senses are opened up, and there's this scene where they're just like walking, and you could just see that things have changed. Obviously, for Louis, he's seeing the world in a brand new way, in a brand new light. He doesn't see humans as he would normally see them. And so Lestat is like, these humans are, merely food now. They're nothing now, and that's totally, that's expected from Lestat. So then Louis Louis and Lestat are in this bar, and Louis is wanting to actually, he wanting his first meal to be this guy who's, you know, he's singing, he's all dramatic, he's like in the military. So after Louis and Lestat comes into this bar, Lestat begins to explain to Louis that the best way to hunt is to show restraint, which I thought was very interesting because if you guys know anything about Lestat, whether it's from the movies, whether it's from the books, Lestat is not very known for his restraint. That's not really what he's talked to or talked about for, I guess I should say. Not talked to, but people don't when people talk about Lestat, they don't talk about restraint. And but I think it kind of goes back to there's the actor who plays Lestat, his name is Sam Reed, and he says in an interview about how Lestat is probably doing the least amount of damage that he could do. And he talks about him showing restraint. And so I thought this was very interesting to put in um the script, because he's letting Louis know that restraint is actually power. So he does know that that you can show restraint. He's not just, because when we think about Lestat, you kind of think about Lestat is this creature who, he doesn't go by the rules. He creates his own rules. He does whatever he wants whenever he wants to do it. It doesn't matter. He's powerful. You don't think restraint automatically. So I thought that's an add-on to the how complex his character already is, right? So Louis and Lestat take the salesman that he chose to be his victim back to the house, and then Louis then he kills him. And Louis is obviously, this is his first kill, so Lestat is instructing him on how to kill. So right away, Louis is distraught by this kill. He is like remorseful. You could just tell that he was kind of disgusted with himself in a sense. And then he's like, you know what, I gotta go. It's like automatically he's like, what did I do? What am I doing? He's like, I gotta go. And so he says that he wants to go back home and get money. He says that he wants to go back home to Grace and Paul, which we already know that he's not obviously thinking clearly, because Paul is indeed dead. So it's just, he's not in a good place right now mentally. And then he walks out, he pushes Lestat, he walks out, and then the sun begins to burn his skin. He's literally on like like on fire. Like he's being burnt to death. And so he has to go back to Lestat, and Lestat comes out and saves him. And then Lestat is like, I should have told you. I'm pretty sure everyone had the same reaction. Like, now why didn't you tell this guy like that he couldn't go outside? Like, you got him all burnt. But anyway, so after Lestat saves him, of course, this is so typical Lestat. He takes him and say, okay, well, you know what? Let's go to bed now. Let's go to the bedroom, and it's like, if you once you watch the episode, you're like, really? And what's so weird about it is, it's like, this definitely feels like something Lestat would do. Like, I mean, he just takes him and just like, hey, listen, I know that just recently became a vampire. I know that you just recently killed someone for the first time. But, I know that you just almost died and you literally have burns all over your skin that we can see. But let's go to bed. Let's sleep together. Like, really? Like, I was like, what? and back in the present day, Louis talk to Daniel about this, about how it was like a lot on him and how it all happened at once. And I think that we can all just look at it, and then Daniel was kind of very nonchalant, I guess you should say. He's like, you're worried about coming out and your sexuality and all these other things, but like you killed this person, this human. And so Daniel is kind of pointing out from his perspective that he thinks that Louis should be more concerned about him killing the human, but you know, that's just what it is. So Louis begins to make a fresh kill in front of Daniel for the first time. And I thought this was very interesting because it's obviously not something that he actually had to do, because he does have the option of just getting blood directly from humans, but he decided to kill this sand fox in front of him. And of course, uh Daniel, which obviously he knows that that Louis is a vampire. He didn't freak out about it. He looked a little bit disgusted, but he was just like, "Oh, okay." And then Daniel says something that's very interesting about the warning of the things to come. So he does mention to Daniel that the book that they're doing, because of this interview, is a warning, to humans, and it's a warning. And after that, we go back in time, back into Louis' story, and Louis and Lestat are talking about, well, Louis is trying to explain to Lestat that, he doesn't like this killing. He's having bad dreams about it. And Lestat is kind of brushing him off like, okay, it's gonna be bad at first, but you'll get used to it. You're gonna learn it. You're gonna learn to love it. I'm sorry. And it was like, what's very interesting about that is it's like, I believe at the beginning he was like, you're gonna come to enjoy it. It's surprises, it's little variations, and I think that Lestat is seeing things from his point of view a little bit too much. I don't think that he is even kind of trying to connect with Louis. But we'll see as the episode goes on and as the season goes on. But so then Lestat reveals to Louis that vampires can read minds, but Lestat cannot read Louis's mind anymore because Lestat is Louis's maker, which is very significant, I think, as it relates to their relationship. So, as we go on in the episode, Louis is very, very desperately, oh, so desperately trying to hold on to his humanity. He's still seeing his family. And even though he's not seeing them as much, he's still going back to them. And even in the interview with Daniel back in the present day, Louis does acknowledge that it was starting to get more and more difficult for him to be around his human family. His mother is starting to be very suspicious of him, and his sexuality. They remember that Louis is a family man, right? So this is a man that spends a lot of time with his family. And so they're noticing, because this white blonde guy, he's never home. He's changing. And so it's starting to bring tension, it's starting to bring resentment amongst him and his family. So, which is very sad, of course. And then we go into back into Louis, go him but kind of making a pitch, I guess you could say, to the salesman. And this salesman is really like just being a normal everyday salesman, a white salesman at that time. But a light bulb kind of went off, I think, with Louis, especially with him turning into a vampire. He's saying yes sir or no sir, and then the white man is calling him boy. And of course, back then that was normal. Anyone who knows anything about racism in America, you would know that black men were often referred to as boy. So it doesn't matter whether they were 20 years old or 30 years old or 80 years old. They were called boy. It was a way to, you know, um, to make them feel like they were not a man, to take away their masculinity. And so they called them boy. It was a way to, demean them and to keep them in their place. And so Louis has had to deal with this his entire life. And so, with that being said, I think that he finally just was like, you know what, I'm done, you know, of dealing with this. And then he ends up killing the businessman that he was supposed to be working with. And him and Lestat gets into this huge argument about it. And then Lestat, he kind of he doesn't really try to reason with him as it relates to racism, which I think is very interesting. But he does mention though that like he was like, Lestat says if he disrespected you, I would have handled it myself. I would have killed him myself. So he does kind of acknowledge it towards the end of their fight, but he makes up for it. So he's trying to figure out what can he do. You know, Lestat wants to make up for it. And so then Louis ends up buying the Fair Play Saloon. So, Lestat gives him the funds and the signature to buy the Fair Play Saloon because, um, to make up for for the fight that they had. And that's so Lestat. I mean, Lestat just, he does what he'll do anything for Louis. Anything that Louis wants, Louis gets. So that's just how it is. But so then going further into the episode, back to the family, Louis' family, he sees his nephew, and unfortunately Louis is then put into this weird spot because he is hungry and he starts to want to eat his own nephew. And so then they take us back to present day with the interview between Louis and Daniel. And Daniel wants to know, automatically he's asking, did you eat the baby? And but Louis did not eat the baby, guys. False alarm, false alarm. Louis did not eat the baby, thank God. But he was distraught. And he also, in the present day where Louis and Daniel are talking, he feeds off a human, but he does not kill him. So Louis is pretty much showing, he wants the world to notice, but I think he's also showing Daniel that he does have self control. But it's just really sad because then back into Louis' story, he's very torn by him almost eating his nephew and wanting to eat his nephew, and he's crying. And so the stat is like, you know what? Let's go to an opera. Let's forget about all of this. But he does. Lestat says to Louis that that Louis needs to really stop seeing his family. That it's becoming too much, that he's hurting them. And this is something, and then Louis just comes out. And I think again it goes back into his character. He says, I can't do it. This is a man who is a family man to the core. Everything that he does is because of his family. He really loves them. And it's difficult for him to part. And Lestat says, I am your family, and then Louis also, he just goes deeper into it and he's like, I'm never going to have my family of my own. He says, I'm never going to have daughters. I'm never going to have sons. And so the cost, right then and there, we start to realize the cost of becoming a vampire, what these young men and women are having to give up. And it's really sad. Like, it really is a sad moment. But I think Lestat tries his best in the way that he knows how to kind of get Louis out of it. And he's like, let's go to an opera. He's trying to kind of, brush him off. So they end up going to this opera. And so there's just this really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scenery. And Lestat and Louis, in my opinion, has this very human moment between them And it was very interesting because I was starting to think, I wonder how Louis and Lestat's life would be if they were human. Because it was a beautiful moment where, because Lestat is a his character, he's a vampire that loves art. You know, he was going to be an actor, right? And well, he was an actor, and so he loves art. And so I just saw that, for him to see not only a human moment from Lestat, but we also seen a human moment with Louis, right, with both of them. And I thought that was beautiful. And I'm not even sure if we would ever get that type of thing again, but it was very interesting to think about. But the alto that was singing with the soprano on stage at the opera, he was not doing so well according to Lestat's standards, and he kind of ruined Lestat's night. So of course, logically, the alto had to die. There we're starting to see the differences, right? The show is starting to show us the differences between Lestat and Louis, and so it Louis is very kind of disgusted, and I think is the right word, by what Lestat is doing, but he ends up feeding off of the alto as well. Towards the end of the episode, we go back to present day with Louis and Daniel. And guys, I after I'm really just sitting down and thinking about it, it's like, so Daniel proposes to his first wife with this dish, with this dessert, and you choose to bring this dessert. And so it had me thinking, like, why did Louis choose to this dessert that is supposedly or supposed to be Daniel's really the happiest moment of his life, or one of, because he got kids too. So one of the happiest moments of his life is when he proposed to his wife. Why did Louis why did Louis choose this dish? Are you trying to invoke that feeling back to Daniel again? Are you doing it to connect with him? Like, is it a proposal that you want to bring to him? Like, I really feel like we're missing something, and I don't even want to get into the eyebrow thing and the different colors. I mean, I would just be talking all day, but I hope that makes sense. Like, it's like it really had me thinking, and it evoked thought in me. So I'm excited about the rest of the season. I'm excited also about season 2. This has been renewed. But yeah, I mean, this is deep. I thank you guys for watching. Please like or subscribe so that way you can stay connected to my channel. I will be doing more videos. Thank you guys. Hope you have a blessed one.